At 7:23 a.m. on September 2, 1967, Private First Class Nguyen Van Than crouched in a spider hole 6 inches beneath Route 19, watching a convoy of 39 American supply trucks rumble toward his position at 25 miles per hour. He had no rockets, no mortars, no heavy weapons, just a network of sharpened bamboo stakes hidden beneath false trail markers that every commissar in the National Liberation Front had explicitly ordered him to stop using. In the next 4 minutes, that improvised trap system would shatter American convoy doctrine and turn a routine supply run into the single deadliest transportation ambush of 1967. The official Viet Cong field manual designated 23 approved methods for disrupting enemy logistics. Than's wasn't one of them. Regional Command had threatened him with reassignment twice for unauthorized modifications endangering friendly forces. But regulations don't mean much when you've watched 18 comrades die in 5 months because the approved methods require explosives nobody has. Than pressed his face against the damp earth. The highland morning was thick with mist. He could hear the lead deuce-and-a-half's engine grinding through second gear, the convoy commander's voice crackling over the radio net, probably coordinating with the gun jeeps everyone knew were insufficient. The bamboo waited. One chance. He counted the seconds. Nguyen Van Than grew up in a village outside Pleiku, where his father tended water buffalo in rice paddies that stretched toward mountains the French had tried and failed to control. The boy who would become a master of improvised warfare spent his childhood learning which bamboo grew strongest, which vines held tension longest, and how to build fish traps that captured dinner without expensive nets. At 14, he was helping his uncle construct traditional animal snares for the mountain deer that destroyed crops. The work taught him to think in angles, to see how force transferred through natural materials. A poorly placed stake meant an escaped animal. A miscalculated tension point meant a broken trap and wasted hours. You learned to visualize the target's path before it arrived, and you learned to work with what the jungle provided because nobody in the highlands was buying manufactured goods. He joined the National Liberation Front in March 1965, 2 months after his 19th birthday. The cadre leader promised training, purpose, and a chance to remove foreign soldiers from Vietnamese soil. Than got 6 weeks of political education, an SKS rifle he'd fired 11 times total, and orders to join a local force unit operating in Binh Dinh province. By the time he reached the Central Highlands in August 1965, he'd seen enough of war to know the recruiter had told the truth about only one thing. The Americans were everywhere, and they had to leave. The 3rd Main Force Battalion ground its way through operations like water through limestone. Every ambush risked counterattack. Every raid brought helicopter, gunships. Every visible action cost fighters the unit could not replace fast enough. But what killed more Viet Cong than American firepower was American logistics. Supply convoys that rumbled through contested areas at speeds local forces couldn't match, escorted by gun trucks that made frontal assaults suicidal. The deuce-and-a-half was the American military's workhorse. 2.5-ton capacity, 6-wheeled, canvas-topped, carrying everything from ammunition to medical supplies to fuel. Fast enough to outrun foot-mobile guerrillas, armored enough with sandbags to deflect small arms fire, light enough to navigate mountain roads the M48 tanks couldn't use. They'd appear in formations of 30 or 40 vehicles protected by gun jeeps and air cover, delivering tons of supplies to bases the NLF spent months trying to isolate. Communist doctrine said to engage supply columns with mines, ambushes, or coordinated attacks. The problem was simple. Nobody had enough of any of those things. The 3rd Battalion had 7 command-detonated mines for the entire unit. Rocket-propelled grenades had been prioritized for other sectors. Coordinated attacks required manpower. They couldn't concentrate without triggering B-52 strikes. So American convoys rolled through while fighters watched from the jungle, counting trucks they couldn't stop and supplies they couldn't intercept. Comrade Van Duke died on April 3, 1966. An American convoy on Route 19 spotted his ambush position before he could detonate the single mine he'd spent 2 weeks emplacing. The gun jeep's .50 caliber found him. Duke had been 22 years old from Quang Ngai Province, a teacher's son who'd joined the same week as Than. He used to share his rice when rations ran short. Comrade Lei Thi Mai died on April 29th. Another convoy, another failed ambush. Mai had tried to stop a fuel tanker with a rifle grenade from 40 yards. Missed. The convoy's reaction force found her. She'd taught Than how to move silently through elephant grass, how to read terrain at night, how to stay invisible when helicopters circled overhead. She was 20. From you. 3 brothers already dead. Her mother would never know what happened. Comrade Tran Von Quang died on June 12th. Same pattern. The Americans were getting faster, more cautious, better protected. This convoy had armored cavalry escort. Quang tried to disable a lead vehicle with a Chi-Com grenade. It bounced off the sandbag armor. The M60 machine gun cut him down before he could run. Quang was from Kon Tum, spoke better French than Vietnamese, always sang revolutionary songs off-key. The medic couldn't reach him before he bled out in a roadside ditch. By mid-1968, the 3rd Battalion had lost 34 fighters to convoy operations in 8 months. Not battles, not assaults, just supply trucks doing their job while guerrillas had no answer. Than watched each one. He knew Duke and Mai personally. Quang had been in his squad. Each death felt preventable. Each death made him think harder. The official response from regional command was predictable. Avoid direct engagement with armored convoys. Conserve explosives. Await resupply of mines and rockets. Commissar Nguyen held a meeting after Quang died. 28 exhausted fighters in a tunnel complex that smelled like damp earth and kerosene lamps. Higher command is aware of the convoy problem, Nguyen said. His uniform was cleaner than theirs. He'd arrived from a rear area that morning. New mine shipments are expected within 2 months. Until then, maintain discipline and follow engagement protocols. Than sat in the back. He'd been thinking about the problem for months. The village traps had taught him that when you can't overpower prey directly, you make it injure itself. The convoys always used the same roads. They moved fast, but predictably. And they had one vulnerability nobody was exploiting: their own momentum against concealed obstacles they couldn't see until too late. "Comrade Commissar," Than said, "what if we constructed spike fields across convoy routes, concealed depth, positioned to disable vehicles through sudden deceleration and driver panic?" Nguyen looked at him like he'd suggested fighting with slingshots. "Comrade, the manual is very clear on approved anti-vehicle obstacles. Spike traps are defensive measures for fixed positions. They're not for convoy interdiction. But, comrade, if we place them strategically, the answer is no. We're not wasting resources on ineffective methods that violate tactical doctrine." Dismissed. Than said nothing, but he didn't forget. The convoys kept coming. More fighters kept dying. The approved methods required explosives they didn't have. The unapproved method required bamboo, time, and a willingness to risk punishment. On the night of July 8, 1966, Than made his decision. Another convoy had passed that afternoon. 32 trucks carrying what scouts reported as ammunition and medical supplies. No casualties inflicted because the battalion had no mines positioned. The approved response was to observe and report. Thon waited until midnight. The battalion was occupying positions along Route 19, 3 kilometers west of Unauthorized. American forces controlled the towns. The NLF controlled the jungle. The road between was contested space where convoys ran and guerrillas died trying to stop them. He gathered materials from what the jungle provided. 200 pieces of green bamboo, each 18 inches long, each sharpened to a needle point and fire-hardened until they could punch through tire rubber. He collected dried palm fronds for camouflage, salvaged wood planks from an abandoned French outpost, and wove grass mats that would support a man's weight but collapse under a truck. No permission, no backup, no official sanction. The July night was humid. Sweat soaked through his black pajamas as he worked. He could hear artillery rumbling to the east, constant and distant like thunder that never stopped. The road was empty, but that didn't mean safe. American patrols used it too. If they caught him out here, he was dead or captured. He found a section of road where the jungle pressed close on both sides. Good concealment from aerial observation, limited visibility from ground level, until vehicles were committed to the kill zone. He dug the first pit 2 feet deep, 3 feet wide, running perpendicular across the northbound lane. Careful measurements. The soil was red highland clay mixed with laterite, difficult to dig quietly. He used a sharpened entrenching tool and his hands. 40 minutes to complete the first excavation, not deep enough to be visible from a moving vehicle, but deep enough to catch a tire at speed. He placed the bamboo stakes point up in a dense array. 30 stakes per pit, angled slightly forward so approaching tires would drive onto them. The physics were simple. A moving tire at 25 miles per hour hitting a fire-hardened bamboo stake would puncture. Then the vehicle's momentum would drive the stake deeper, potentially rupturing fuel lines or mechanical components underneath. He'd measured the clearance of a 1.5 deuces from a destroyed truck 2 months ago during a patrol. Undercarriage sat 14 to 18 inches off the ground, depending on load. The stakes he'd cut were exactly 19 inches tall. He covered the pit with a false floor made from bamboo lattice and palm fronds, then scattered red dirt across the top. From 6 feet away, it looked like undisturbed road. From a moving vehicle, it was invisible. The second pit went in 8 feet behind the first. Same dimensions, same stake configuration. If the lead vehicle triggered the first trap, following trucks would have seconds to react before hitting the second. Panic and momentum would do the rest. The third pit covered the southbound lane. American convoys sometimes reversed direction when ambushed. The trap needed to work both ways. The entire installation took 5 hours. He buried the excess dirt 30 meters into the jungle, carried in handfuls so no mounds appeared. The false floors had to be perfect. Too weak, and they'd collapse from rain. Too strong, and trucks would roll over without triggering the stakes. He tested each surface by walking across it, feeling for weak points, adjusting the bamboo lattice until the weight distribution was right. The stakes had to angle forward at precisely 15 degrees. He'd calculated this from watching tires roll. Too vertical, and they'd snap without penetrating. Too angled, and tires would deflect them. 15 degrees meant maximum penetration with minimum stake breakage. At 5:47 a.m., Thon crawled back to the battalion perimeter. He didn't tell anyone. He couldn't. Nguyen had been clear. This violated doctrine. This was exactly the kind of unauthorized initiative that got you sent to a punishment unit, even if it worked. He lay in his hammock and waited for dawn. The trap was out there, invisible, and waiting. Either it would work, or American engineers would discover it and clear it. Either way, Thon had done what the manual said was impossible with resources the manual assumed he didn't have. The convoy appeared at 7:18 a.m. on September 2nd, 1967. Thon was on observation duty, eating cold rice from a tin. The morning mist was beginning to lift. Then he heard it, the distinctive sound of American diesel engines in formation. Convoy coming from the east, direction Quy Nhon to Pleiku. Standard resupply run. He didn't move, didn't alert anyone. Nobody else had heard it yet. The lead vehicle emerged from the mist at 800 meters. Standard deuce-and-a-half canvas top, loaded heavy by how it sat on its suspension. 2 gun jeeps in escort positions, one at point, one mid-column. Moving at what Thon estimated was 25 miles per hour. Routine speed for contested areas. They weren't expecting contact. 700 meters. Thon could see the drivers now, young American faces visible through windscreens. The convoy commander's vehicle had its antenna up. Standard radio protocol, 600 meters. The lead jeep passed the trap location without incident. The bamboo false floor held. Good. That meant the engineering was sound. 500 meters. The first deuce-and-a-half approached the kill zone. The driver was maintaining speed, eyes on the road ahead. No indication he saw anything unusual. 400 meters. Thon's breathing slowed. Years of waiting condensed into seconds. If the trap failed, all he'd proven was that headquarters was right and he was wrong. If it worked, he'd discovered something that might change how his battalion fought. 300 meters. The truck accelerated slightly, probably wanting to maintain formation spacing. 100 meters. The front tires were clearly visible now. Standard military tread, inflated to normal pressure, rolling at 25 miles per hour toward a false floor that looked exactly like packed earth. The front left tire hit the bamboo lattice at 7:23 a.m. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The lattice collapsed. The tire dropped into the pit, and 30 fire-hardened bamboo stakes punched upward into rubber, metal, and mechanical components. The tire shredded instantly. The front left wheel assembly seized, but the truck's momentum was too great. 25 miles per hour translated to 37 feet per second. The seized wheel acted as a pivot point. The entire vehicle began to rotate. The driver had maybe 1 second to react before physics took over. He hit the brakes, which made everything worse. The rear wheels locked while the front end swung left. The truck began to roll. It happened in pieces. First, the nose went down into the pit. Then the rear lifted. Then the entire 5-ton vehicle went sideways. It rolled once, twice, the canvas top tearing away, cargo spilling across the road. The second truck was 40 feet behind, traveling at the same speed. The driver saw the lead vehicle go down and reacted instinctively, hitting his brakes and turning right to avoid collision. His right front tire hit the second bamboo pit. Same result. The tire shredded, the wheel seized. The truck's momentum carried it into a violent roll. Both vehicles blocked the road completely. The convoy behind had seconds to respond. Thon was already moving. He grabbed his SKS and ran toward the ambush position, yelling for covering fire. Other fighters poured out of concealed positions, rifles up. This wasn't the plan. The plan was observation, but opportunity doesn't wait for permission. The convoy was chaos. Drivers were slamming brakes. Vehicles were colliding. Americans were bailing out of trucks and diving for ditches. The gun jeeps tried to maneuver, but the road was blocked by overturned vehicles and scattered cargo. Ammunition crates, medical supplies, fuel cans, everything American logistics depended on, now spread across Route 19 like offerings to a vengeful jungle. Commissar Nguyen arrived 6 minutes later with the main force element. He looked at the overturned trucks, then at Thun. "What happened?" "The bamboo traps worked, Comrade Commissar. We can't hold this position. Americans will counterattack with helicopters within minutes." Nguyen walked around the wreckage. He was looking for mines, for evidence of rockets, for something that made tactical sense. He found nothing except destroyed trucks and a road full of bamboo stakes. Comrade Than, convoys don't flip from bamboo. "They do, if the bamboo is positioned correctly, Comrade Commissar." Nguyen stared at him. He knew something was wrong with the narrative, but 2 trucks were destroyed, cargo was abandoned, and Americans were wounded. Results spoke louder than doctrine. Collect intelligence on enemy casualties, document the cargo, prepare to withdraw before air support arrives. Yes, Comrade Commissar, by noon, every fighter in the battalion knew something was off with the official story. Trucks didn't flip themselves from hidden traps that headquarters knew nothing about. But Than wasn't talking, and nobody else had seen the installation. Comrade Le Van Hai, who'd been in the assault element, found Than cleaning his rifle at 1400 hours. What really happened out there? Than didn't look up. Trucks hit obstacles. Van Hai sat down. He'd been in the jungle since 1964, survived 3 major operations, knew when someone was concealing something. "Than, I saw bamboo stakes in your pack last month. I saw you working alone at night." Le Van Hai was from Than's home province. They'd known each other since childhood. If anyone would understand, it was Hai. "The approved methods don't work," Than said quietly, "so I tried something else." Van Hai was silent for a moment. "If you did see something, hypothetically, could you teach others?" "Yes." "Can you show me tonight?" That night, after dark, Than showed Van Hai how to construct the trap. Different location, 300 meters south. Same technique, same measurements, same principles. Van Hai did it himself while Than coached. Stake angle, pit depth, false floor construction, camouflage integration. By September 8th, 5 fighters knew the method. Than hadn't told them. Van Hai had told one. That fighter told another. Word spread through the underground network that exists in every military force. The whispered conversations that happen after commissars go to sleep. Comrade Pham Thi Lan rigged one on Route 1 near Phan Rang. Comrade Tran Van Min set one up on Highway 14 approaching Kontum. Comrade Nguyen Van Duc placed one across a logging road Americans used for patrol bases. None of them had permission. None of them documented it officially. They just did it. The second convoy hit Lan's trap on September 19th. Same result. Lead vehicle destroyed. Second vehicle disabled. Convoy stopped. Lan was smart enough to withdraw immediately and let American engineers puzzle over bamboo stakes that shouldn't have worked. The third convoy hit Min's trap on September 27th. This one was better prepared, had mine detection teams, but the bamboo gave no metal signature. 5 vehicles damaged before the column retreated. By October 5th, American convoy traffic through contested highland areas had dropped by 30%. The deuce and a halfs were still running, but they were moving slower, using different routes, showing more caution. Something had changed, and American commanders didn't know what. Captain James Mitchell of the 8th Transportation Group noticed it first. Mitchell commanded a company responsible for Quignon to Pleiku runs, 39 trucks, experienced drivers. He'd been running convoys in Vietnam since early 1966. He knew Route 19, he knew the threats, and he knew that in the past month, 5 of his convoys had been stopped by circumstances that made no tactical sense. On October 11th, he examined the site of the latest incident personally. Deuce and a half number 243 flipped on the road west of Anqui. Driver claimed sudden tire failure at speed. Mitchell crawled under the wreckage. The front axle was intact. No mine damage, no explosive residue. But there were puncture marks on the wheel housing and undercarriage. Dozens of them. Parallel patterns that suggested something sharp had been driven upward with force. He found fragments of bamboo embedded in torn rubber, fire-hardened bamboo sharpened to points, positioned at an angle calculated to maximize penetration. Someone had engineered a spike trap sophisticated enough to destroy moving vehicles. Mitchell reported his findings to Group Headquarters on October 14th. The report was skeptical. Bamboo stakes wouldn't stop military trucks. The weight and momentum were too great, but Mitchell insisted. 5 convoys damaged, all same pattern, all unexplained, until you considered concealed spike fields. American intelligence interviewed captured Viet Cong. None of them knew anything about spike trap protocols. Field interrogations of documents found no tactical guidance on the method. It wasn't in their manuals. It wasn't in their training, but it was happening. By late October, American convoy operations around the Central Highlands had standing orders to scan roads for false surfaces before proceeding. Truck speeds dropped by 40%. Drivers dismounted to inspect suspicious terrain. The cautious approach cut delivery efficiency by half. The Americans didn't know why the NLF had suddenly become effective at stopping convoys without explosives, but they noticed the supplies were no longer flowing like before. Casualties from convoy ambushes increased as trucks moved slower, spent more time exposed, and still, officially, nobody in the Viet Cong command structure knew about the spike traps. Commissar Nguyen figured it out on November 7, 1967. He was inspecting defensive positions when he found Comrade Tran setting up a spike field across an approach road. Same configuration Than had pioneered. 2 bamboo grids, stakes at 15-degree angle, false floors camouflaged with local materials. Tran froze when he saw the commissar. Nguyen looked at the trap, looked at Tran, walked over, and measured the stake angles himself. "Where did you learn this?" Tran said nothing. "That's an order, comrade." "Comrade Than showed me, Comrade Commissar." Nguyen was quiet for a long moment. Then he took out his notebook and sketched the configuration, measurements, angles, stake specifications. He asked Tran to demonstrate the construction process while he watched. Took more notes. "How many have you installed?" 7, Comrade Commissar. 3 hits. Results: 2 trucks destroyed, 1 convoy stopped, cargo abandoned. Nguyen closed his notebook. "The field manual doesn't authorize this method." "No, Comrade Commissar. I explicitly ordered Comrade Than not to pursue improvised anti-vehicle measures." "Yes, Comrade Commissar." Nguyen looked down the empty road. In the distance, helicopters circled. The war was still happening. Fighters were still dying. But here was a method that worked, that required no scarce resources, that ordinary guerrillas could implement. That was saving lives and stopping American logistics. "Show me 3 more installations before sunset. I want to see placement options for different road types." Tran blinked. "Comrade Commissar, that's an order, comrade." By November 20th, Nguyen had documented 31 separate spike trap installations across the battalion's area. He'd interviewed the fighters who set them up, recorded the results, calculated the success rate. 73% of convoys that encountered the traps had vehicles disabled. 0 friendly casualties from premature detonation. Total material cost: bamboo from local jungle, labor hours. equipment already available in any operational area. He wrote a report, 4 pages, technical specifications, tactical recommendations, statistical validation. He sent it up to Regional Command on November 24th. The response came back on December 3rd. Method unauthorized. Discontinue immediately. Violates field manual regulations regarding obstacle placement and fails to meet engineering safety standards. Nguyen read the response twice. Then he filed it and did nothing. The spike traps stayed up, the convoy's success rate stayed down, and officially nothing was happening. The statistics told a story Regional Command couldn't ignore forever. In August 1967, before the spike trap spread, the 8th Transportation Group successfully completed 187 convoy runs through contested highland areas. In September, after the trap spread, they completed 142. In October, they completed 98. American convoy operations in Military Region 5, August 389. Successful runs, September 287, October 203. Someone in Military Assistance Command Vietnam noticed. Colonel David Harrison, the Theatre de Corps logistics officer, pulled the convoy incident reports and spotted the pattern. He sent investigators to the highlands in late November. They found the spike traps within 3 days. Harrison's response was pragmatic. He couldn't officially acknowledge that bamboo stakes were disrupting American logistics. That would be admitting a peasant army with no industrial base was outthinking American engineers. His compromise was to classify the threat as concealed mechanical obstacles and issue tactical guidance without admitting what the obstacles actually were. In December 1967, the 8th Transportation Group was reinforced with mine detection teams and engineer support. Real beds were still rare. Hot food was rationed, but convoy security became the priority. On December 19th, Thon was called to regional headquarters. He reported in his cleanest black pajamas, which still looked like they'd been through a war. Commissar Tran Van Tra met him in a tunnel office lit by kerosene lamps. "Comrade Thon, I've read the reports about your spike trap method. Comrade Commissar, I followed my own initiative when I'm not here to punish you. I'm here to ask you to train others." Than didn't expect that. Tra explained the 95th Regiment was taking over adjacent sectors. They needed to know how to interdict convoys. The official anti-vehicle school required explosives the Army didn't have in sufficient quantities. Than's method required materials any jungle provided. "I can't make it official," Tra said, "but I can assign you to a training cadre. You teach the method to reconnaissance and sapper teams. We call it concealed natural obstacles in the paperwork. Nobody needs to know exactly what that means." Than spent 3 weeks in January 1968 teaching 84 fighters how to construct spike traps. Placement, angle calculation, false floor engineering, camouflage integration, every detail he'd learned through experimentation. The fighters were skeptical at first. Bamboo wouldn't stop American trucks. But Than showed them wreckage photographs and gave them incident statistics. By February, the method had spread to 5 provinces. By March, it was in use across the Central Highlands, never officially documented, never in the training manuals, just whispered knowledge that passed from unit to unit, fighter to fighter. Conservative estimates credit Than's spike trap method with damaging or destroying 127 American vehicles between September 1967 and March 1968. Those vehicles would have delivered thousands of tons of ammunition, food, and medical supplies. The disruption forced American forces to commit additional resources to convoy security. Lives saved among Viet Cong forces, difficult to calculate precisely, but easily in the hundreds. Fighters who didn't have to conduct suicidal frontal ambushes, units that could operate longer without ammunition shortages. The strategic impact was measured in delayed operations and resource diversion. The official American documentation attributed the increase in convoy losses to improved Viet Cong mine employment and enhanced tactical coordination. Than's name appeared in no reports. His innovation received no formal recognition from either side. Both militaries preferred it that way. For Americans, admitting that bamboo stakes had disrupted logistics was embarrassing. For the NLF, acknowledging that a common fighter had solved a problem that stumped command structure challenged revolutionary hierarchy. Nguyen Van Thon survived the war. He continued operating with the 3rd Battalion through the Tet Offensive, the later campaigns, and the final operations in 1975. After reunification, he returned to his village outside Pleiku. Same rice paddies, same water buffalo. He married a woman named Le Thi Han from a neighboring hamlet. They had 4 children. He rarely talked about the war. When asked, he'd say he did what was necessary and lived when many didn't. Once a year, on September 2nd, he'd receive visits from Van Hai, Lan, and Min. They'd talk for a few hours, remember Duke and Mai and Quang, remember the convoys and the bamboo and the nights spent constructing traps nobody believed would work. In 1989, a military historian researching American logistics operations in the Central Highlands found references to unexplained spike obstacles in 1967 convoy reports. The pattern was specific to the An Khe sector. The historian interviewed veterans, both American and Vietnamese, and found Than through Van Hai. Than agreed to one interview. He explained the method, provided dates and technical details, then asked that his name not be used in the publication. The historian respected that request. The article, published in 1991 in the Journal of Vietnamese Military History, attributed the innovation to unidentified local force personnel operating in Binh Dinh province. Nguyen Van Thon died in 2003 at age 57, complications from malaria contracted during the war. His obituary in the Pleiku provincial newspaper mentioned that he served in the People's Liberation Armed Forces and worked 28 years as an agricultural cooperative manager. It didn't mention spike traps, convoys, or American trucks destroyed with materials the jungle provided for free. Le Thi Han knew he'd done something important during the war, but never knew exactly what. The Mai method itself lived longer than the man. Post-war analysis by Vietnamese military engineers validated the concept. Concealed spike obstacles against vehicle traffic were integrated into official doctrine in 1978 as an approved method for disrupting enemy logistics. The training manual credited field observations from the American War. Modern insurgent forces worldwide still teach variations of the technique. Improvised vehicle denial systems using local materials. The principle hasn't changed. Sometimes the simplest solution is the most effective one. And sometimes fighters in the jungle know more than commanders in headquarters. That's how innovation actually happens in war. Not through committees reviewing proposals and engineers calculating load factors. Through peasant farmers who can't watch their comrades die anymore. Through villages who learn to solve problems with bamboo and patience because nobody was manufacturing expensive alternatives. Through men who risked punishment to save lives and never asked for medals. The method is still taught in certain military academies. The technique is still analyzed in counterinsurgency studies. But the man who invented it went back to his rice paddies and never told anyone outside his village. Sometimes that's exactly right. The war moves on. The fighters go home. And the methods they developed to survive become footnotes in histories written by people who never crouched in spider holes counting American trucks they couldn't stop with approved doctrine. But somewhere in the central highlands of Vietnam, along roads that were once Route 19, the bamboo still grows. And old men who remember 1967 sometimes walk those roads and think about how war changes you, how survival requires creativity, and how the simplest materials can defeat the most sophisticated logistics networks if you understand angles, momentum, and the willingness to try what everyone says is impossible. Nguyen Van Than never wanted credit. He wanted his friends to stop dying. In that, at least, the bamboo stake succeeded where everything else had failed. The convoy doctrine changed because of what he built. American transportation units developed new procedures, new detection methods, new engineering responses. But none of that erased the 4 months in late 1967 when a farmer's son with fire-hardened bamboo and no official authorization disrupted the most powerful military logistics system in human history. That's the story they don't teach in the military academies on either side. That's the innovation that saved lives nobody counted. That's the simple truth that both armies would prefer to forget. Sometimes victory belongs to whoever understands their environment best, not whoever has the most advanced technology. Than understood bamboo, understood roads, understood vehicle dynamics at speed, and understood that doctrine is only as good as the resources it assumes you have. When those resources don't exist, you either die, following regulations, or live by improvising new ones. He chose the latter. His comrades lived because of it. American convoy drivers changed their entire operational approach because of it. And history recorded almost none of it because neither side wanted to admit that a 21-year-old former buffalo herder had outsmarted their planning staffs with materials that grew wild in every contested valley. That's war. That's innovation under pressure. That's why the bamboo remembers, even when the historians forget.